Ramtha, and, Master, when you rear your sibling, never tell it that life will be sweeter when it grows up. That is a very limiting thing to do to another entity. Create the understanding that every moment of its life is important. Allow your child to grow slowly and to be a child as long as it desires to be. Then you will be a wondrous blessing to one of your beloved brothers and can share in its joy of this plane. So be it. 110. Chapter 8 Creation and Evolution. God the Father is compulsive, contemplative thought called life, an ongoingness that can never stand still any more than your own thoughts can. In order for thought or life to be an ongoing expansion into forever, it must have a reason to continue. The reason is you. Each of you became a part of the mind of God so that, through you, life would continue to expand itself into forever, which indeed has no measure in time, for forever is in this moment. It is the ongoingness and the eternity of now. Ramtha, who set the lights into the heavens, who designed the loveliness of flowers and the magnificence of trees, and who created the enigma and the wonderment called man. 'Twas not God, the totality of life. It was you, the gods, the wonderful sons of an all-loving Father who created all that is all. The Father is the substance, the thought mass from which all things come. But you who possess the capacity to think, and the capacity to feel, and the divine essence of free will, are the supreme creators in life. God is indeed the totality of thought, the source of everything that is. But you are the ones who have taken from the thought that the Father is and created all the splendor and loveliness of created form. Through your creative power and your sovereign godship, you have the ability to accept, to hold, and to contemplate thought. And through that intelligence you have fashioned everything that is. Ponder for a moment a fantasy. Think of a fantasy that is exciting, thrilling, volatile to your being. Now feel all the emotion of that fantasy. That is how your universe was created. That is how man was created. That is how everything is created. My beloved masters, you are indeed the creators of all life. You are the ones who made the spectacular lights that you see in your heavens. You are the ones who created the realities of color, design, texture, and smell. You are indeed the magnificent creatures of a magnificent Father that is truly everything that is. You are not the bastards of the universe, you are the creators of it. You are the supreme intelligence of God expressing in your own creation called man, and all life stands awaiting your presence, your thought, your feeling. 113. You, my esteemed brothers, are eminent creatures of divine proportions who hold latent within your beings the intelligence and the power to create all things, and yet you do not realize this. You are more than creatures of flesh. You are awesome entities expressing through form in order to continue the creative abilities within you. Without your creative thought processes, your superb intelligence, and the profound emotion within your souls, without all that is unseen about you, you would be a no thing. And without your creative abilities, life would be a no thing, for thought could not propagate itself to become the values of life or the eternity that is yet to be lived. Without your creative value, nothing would be recognized for what it is. What would be the reason for the life and the beauty of a flower if there were no one to appreciate its loveliness? It would have no meaning here without you. Without you, this place of yours would be only a formless planet wallowing in the sperms of creativity. Without you, the seasons never would have been, the flowers never would have bloomed, the sun never would have risen, and the winds never would have blown, for you created this kingdom according to your purposeful designs, and all things have come forth willingly to glorify the God that lies within you. Who else designed this magnificent place for you to inhabit? Only you did this. Are you not the creatures of supreme intelligence? Indeed you are. You did not evolve into that. You have always been that. Now I am here to teach you to become unlimited, indeed, but I will teach you of your worth and value first. To know that you are divine, to understand the supreme intelligence and awesome power that you possess, it is important for you to understand your heritage. It is important for you to understand how you became, in your beginning, wisps of light of awesome power and how you have evolved yourselves to become the enigma called man. I will thus begin to explain. In your book of books it says, in the beginning was the 114 Word, and all was with the Word. Most improper. The Word was nothing without the thought, for thought is the basis and creator of everything that is. In the beginning, what you would term the beginning all was the infiniteness of thought. Now the infiniteness of thought I will call God the Father. What you term God is, in a more unlimited understanding, thought, the principal cause and foundation of all life. Everything that is, that ever has been, that ever will be, is derived from thought, the intelligence that is the mind of God. So in the beginning there was the infinite space of thought. And God always would have been thought without form had he not contemplated himself, turned and bent inward unto himself the thought that he was. When the Father contemplated the thought that he was, he expanded himself into a unique form of himself, for any time a thought is contemplated, the action of pure reasoning expands the thought. The thought becomes more, it becomes greater. Thus the Father, who had never before expanded his being, contemplated himself into a greatorness. What gave the Father the desire to comprehend himself into a greater existence? Love. The very essence, the very purpose of contemplative thought is love. It was the love of God for itself that gave it the desire to contemplate itself into a unique, expanded form of itself. From that movement of love, all of you were born, for when God embraced and loved itself into a greatorness, all of you became that which God expanded itself into. Each of you became in that same wondrous moment an illustrious part of the first contemplated, expanded thought. Being the first created unit of God the Father, each of you became a God of God, a Son of the Father, and a part of the divine intelligence called the mind of God. You, the gods, are the only creation that is directly of God. You are the only creation that is ever the complete duplicate of what the Father is, for you are the Father in an expanded form of himself. All that the Father is, he is infinitely in the composite of his beloved sons. 115. God the Father is compulsive, contemplative thought called life, an ongoingness that can never stand still any more than your own thoughts can. In order for thought or life to be an ongoing expansion into forever, it must have a reason to continue. The reason is you. Each of you became a part of the mind of God so that, through you, life would continue to expand itself into forever, which indeed has no measure in time, for forever is in this moment. It is the ongoingness and the eternity of now. For the purpose of going onward, the Father gave each of you the only thing that ever is or ever will be, the totality of thought, which is the totality of God. Each of you were given by the Father, for the Father, all that you are, a divine intelligence and a sovereign, creative will. Through that intelligence and freedom of will, you were given the power to take from the thought that the Father is and expand yourself according to your own contemplative thought processes. God, the divine mind, continuously expands itself and becomes more through each of you. Whatever you become in your own expansion, the Father readily becomes. And whatever the Father has come to be through the expansion of all of his beloved sons, you may readily become, for each son stands in receivership of whatever the Father is. Thus, through your contemplative thoughts, you can always be what God is, an ongoing, expansive, extraordinarily wonderful kingdom. When thought contemplated itself in your beginning, what it expanded itself into was the principle of thought called light. Light was created first because whenever thought is contemplated and expanded, it is always lowered into a vibratory frequency that emits light. Light is thus the first lowered form of contemplated, expanded thought. Your original heritage goes back to the birthing of light, for each particum of light born of the first contemplated thought became an individual, a God, a son. Thus all became what is termed light beings at the birthing of creation. Everyone was created into being at that same moment. All entities that ever were, or ever will be, were created from thought. 116. Creation and evolution. Into light the moment God contemplated itself. The light emanating from the space of thought became adjacent to and part of the mind of God, the flow of all thought termed the river of thought. The light that each of you became was and is the intelligence that you are, it is God in its expanded form as light. That divine light, which is your original and permanent body, is the spirit of your being, or what I call the God of your being, for your spirit is God, the mind of God in singular form. To this day you still possess the original spirit, the original God self, the original body of light that you became in all of your glory the moment thought, your beloved Father, contemplated and expanded itself into light. Now in your beginning when thought, or God, passed through the spirit of your being, an emotion was created but it was fleeting. So your soul was created through your creative force in order to capture the river of love that issued forth from God the Father. It was created for the purpose of captivating thought from the ongoing flow of the river of thought and putting it into a stillness, what is termed memory in the form of emotion. Your soul, which is housed within your spirit, is what has enabled you to be a creative principle. For in order to create, you must have the ability to hold the image of thought clear and steadfast in memory. By doing so, you can contemplate the thought and expand it into the creative values that you call reality. For instance, in order to create a new and unique flower, you must have the thought of a flower emerge. The thought of a flower is taken from the flow of ongoing thought, which the spirit or light of your being is at one with. The thought is then held clear in the soul as an image, in the form of emotion. Through desire, you can now recall the image of the thought flower, contemplate it, and expand it into whatever unique form, color, or height you desire. Now you can uniquely create a flower however you wish and at any moment you wish. By holding the thought perfectly still in memory, you may paint its picture perfectly. 117. Without your soul, you could not expand the Father into created form, for you could not make thought stand still in order to contemplate and expand it into creation. Now what you term creation is really the value of life that has always been. There is no beginning to creation and certainly there is no ending to it. And the creators from the substance of thought are all of you, the light entities, the gods. Everything has been created by the sons from the thought that the Father is, and whatever the sons create becomes the expanded self of the Father. Everything that you see around you is called matter. The Father is the matter, for everything is God. But the creators and designers of the matter are the artisans of artisans, which all of you are, gods that you are, for you had from your beginning the purposeful intelligence to create into matter whatever ideals you could envision through thought. Everything is derived from thought. Everything. Each thing of matter has come forth from a thought that was embraced into emotion to form an ideal of creation. Before anything was ever created, the thought of it was first envisioned through the soul as an ideal. All things of matter were created from a thought ideal envisioned by the gods and put together by them from the matter that the Father is. Now all matter is surrounded by light. Your scientists are beginning to suspect, and they are correct in their suspicion, that if you take light and lower or slow its vibratory frequency, it becomes gross matter. And where did the light come from? Thought. God. Whenever you contemplate thought and emotionally embrace it, the thought expands into the vibratory frequency of light. If you slow the movement of the particles of light and condense it, you create electrum, an electromagnetic field that has positive and negative poles, which you call electricity. If you slow and condense the thought still further, beyond the electromagnetic fields, the electrum coagulates into gross matter. Gross matter then coagulates into the molecular and cellular. 118. Structures called form. And the form is held together by the thought that the soul envisioned as an ideal of creation. All things are created by taking that which has no speed thought and expanding it into that which does light, and then slowing the light down until you create this and that and all that is around you. Beloved masters, it is you who have created through your own thought processes the beauty and the splendor of all that is. It is you who have created all things from thought, into light, into electrum, into matter, into form simply by thinking and feeling them into being, for you, who were thought that had been lowered into light, contemplated the light you had become and loved the light that you were, and by doing so you lowered light one step further to create electrum. When you contemplated the electrum that God had become through your thought processes, you lowered the electrum into gross matter, or coagulated thought, the lowest form of thought and yet another dimension of the Father, into Himself. So your first movement was the recognition of what is termed the science of thought into matter. And that science was never taught, it was simply understood, for it was a process of life that you were involved in. It was from that science, from that understanding, that created forms began. In the beginning of created forms, the gods contemplated themselves, the lights that they were, and created the ideal of light into matter by creating what are called suns. And there were 1,000,000,000,000,000 of them without number. All of the suns were created from the focusing or the fusion of gaseous matter that resulted from the lowering of electrum. And from the great suns, the central sparks of life, rotating spheres called planets were created and thrust into their orbits. And upon the spheres, the gods created designs. And it took eons for you to learn design. Who created this universe and all universes that surround an even greater sun cycle? You did, indeed. You designed it simply. Each thing that you created through contemplated thought expanded your experience, which allowed feelings, the truest. 119. Treasure of thought to occur within your soul. And it was through feelings that the plane of matter was created. Your divinity lies in that you are indeed the beginning sparks of light and that you, the creators, have created from the Father through your sovereign wills all that is all. God did not create the universes, He is the universes. You created them from your thinking processes by feeling them in your souls. Most of you were among the gods who came to this place of yours called Earth eons ago, and here you created and evolved all life. Over millions of years, as you know time to be, you took from the thought that the Father is, and through your supreme intelligence and creative power you designed your ideals of creation. You, the light entities, formulated living organisms here from bacteria that formed through the reaction of gaseous matter in water. That was the clay from which you created the different values of life. And in the beginning your creations were merely grouped matter expressing as a glob of something. Your creativity was very simple because you were only beginning to understand the reality of matter and how to create from it. But over eons of time you created the plants and animals and every other living creature upon this plane. Creatures were devised by you as an expression of your creative emotion, as an expression of creative life, life forms that could be mobile and that could themselves express. The flower was created by a group of you. Color was introduced. Aroma was added. Later, various aspects of the flower were brought into different designs. You must understand that you did not labor to create these things, for as light beings you were without an embodiment to labor with. Whatever you desired to create, you simply became it. In order to give substance to matter, to give personality to it, to give intelligence and design to it, you became a part of everything you created. Once each creation became a living thing of the intelligence of its creator, you withdrew from your creation, always searching for greater creations. 120. Everything you created here would not be so beautiful or sublime, nor would it have purposeful meaning, if it did not have the breath of life of its creator within it. You are the ones who breathed into your creations the intelligence or patterns of genetic memory called instinct. That is what gave your creations a purpose for being and the means through reproductive processes and the sharing of genes for new species to evolve. Yet the new species would still carry the intelligence of instinct, the breath of life from the great creative gods who set into motion the patterns for evolution. That is why all living things have within them the divine essence that is the spark of life from you, the gods, their creators. It was not until a food chain had been clearly established here that the gods decided to create a vehicle of matter through which they could experience their creations and continue to express their creativity, but as themselves rather than through their creations. And for that they created the embodiment called man. Now thought is a penetrating frequency, an essence that passes through matter. Thus the gods, who were thought in the form of light, could become the flower, yet never smell it, never know its essence. They were like the breeze that would blow through the trees, yet could never feel or embrace the tree. They would pass through stone, yet they could not feel it because thought is not affected by the matter that the stone is, for it lacks the sensitivity to feel the essence of a lower vibration. In order for the gods to smell the flower, to hold the flower, to wear the flower, in order for them to know its beauty and experience its vividness, they had to create a vehicle of matter that vibrates at the same rate of speed that the flower is vibrating. Thus the embodiment called man was created, after all other things were created, so that the gods could feel and experience their creations and express their creative ability through gross matter, or what is termed solidity and mass thought taken to its lowest form. Man was created through a thought ideal to be a vehicle for the gods to ride within. It was the perfect embodiment for a god. 121. For it could hold the soul and be enveloped by the spirit of the god. Now through an embodiment, the gods could touch the flower and smell its essence, and the experience of that would be recorded forever in their souls as feelings, the treasure of their doings. Now indeed they could look upon a tree and contemplate it, savor its smell, and touch its beauty. Now the gods could see and touch and embrace and speak to one another. Now they could nurture and observe and be completely volatile to one another. And now the gods, as man, had a whole new adventure in matter in which to play for the invisible essence called feelings. Thus the gods, light beings without the density of mass, created a density appropriate to their ideal. Through the mass of the embodiment they could express in yet another reality, thought manifested into the form called matter. In that they became God, divine thought manifested into the intelligence of the cellular mass called mankind. Thus they became God, man, God, God expressing in the wonderment of human form, man expressing the God within him to continue his Father's expansion into forever. The first men came forth only after much experimentation by a group of the gods. At first only males were created, and they were not even created with loins. The loins were inside of them so that they could reproduce themselves through the process called cloning. Thus all man embodiments looked alike when they were first created. And they were rather humble creatures who would be considered very grotesque to you today. But to the gods in those times, they were very beautiful. Unfortunately, they were not very swift on their feet, thus they were continuously made a meal of by the animals about. So the gods tried and tested and modified them for a long time until they were worthy of complete possession. Once the embodiment had been perfected, many of the gods in great jubilation took possession of embodiments for a new adventure in the exploration of life. The embodiments that the gods inhabited were designed to house a power structure that would enable the light beings to improve continuously upon the embodiment so they could live. 122. And coexist in a very dangerous environment. The body was designed so that the memory of every thought the god embraced into emotion would be patterned in every cell and thus carried on through the process of cloning. When womb of man or woman was created much later, as a more perfected form of man, it permitted uniqueness and further refinement of the embodiment through the sharing of genes. The man would carry in his seed the patterns of his understanding gained to that point, and the woman would carry it in her egg. Through the act of copulation, the genetic patterns of the two would come together to create an even greater entity based on the learning and realizations of its parents. Yet they were creating only a better body through this process, not a better spirit. As the understanding of the gods living as man began to grow as their survival necessitated it, the body was continuously perfected from its primeval form, or what you call evolved, a process which has continued for over 10.5 million years in your counting. It has taken that long for you to become what you are this moment. Your body is young. Man, in the uprightness of his tested mobility, is only 10.5 million years old. But you, the light beings, have always been, because how does one determine the beginning of contemplative thought based on time when there wasn't anything called time? So you are ancient. And for billions of years, as you term and measure time, you created an electrum. Then lowering electrum into gross matter became a new and different adventure. Thus through billions of years of design and exploration, man became a living, breathing creature of coagulated thought and dense matter. All of this plane you created. That is why reality would not be here if it weren't for the lot of you. The animals are beloved, for they have been given the breath of life through you, their creators. The flowers are beloved, for they have the patterns of your beauty in them. All life does, and it is all because of you. Who are you? You are the great gods of light, the great creators of all life. You are the grand, infinite thought magnified. 123. And lowered into creative matter. You are God, the forever thought, experiencing the form called humanity. You are God manifested as man to continue the expansion of thought into forever. Student, I find myself in a position of having to decide whether or not I'm going to pursue the learning of all the things you are teaching. All that you say pleases me, but I'm held back by an element of doubt as to whether all the things you teach are true. Is there anything you can tell me or do for me which will convince me that what you say is true? Ramtha, no. But I will ask you this, tell me what is not truth. Student, what is not truth? Well, for example, I recently heard a tape recording of an audience in which you gave a very beautiful description of how creation began. It was very pleasing and very detailed, especially in comparison to other versions I've heard. I'd like to believe that the way you spoke it was exactly the way it happened. But I can't be sure that what you said is true. Ramtha, then how did it happen? Student, I don't have an explanation. I'm just searching for a better understanding. Ramtha, you have heard many explanations of how creation occurred. Which do you choose? Student, I've really only heard 2 or 3. But yours pleases me the most. Ramtha, why? Student, well, it is more detailed. Ramtha, how could it be so detailed? How does one have knowledge of the things they speak? Student, experience. Ramtha, ah, indeed. That was my experience of how it was and how it is. That is how I remember it. Student, but can you understand my doubts? Ramtha, indeed, because you have not allowed yourself to remember. But I will tell you this, listen to it again, and while all the other accounts have utterly failed to explain anything, there is no lacking in this account, and it all follows suit. Convince you. I will not do that, for I would never convince. 124. Creation and evolution. Only you allow that to occur. Student, well, can I ask you a couple of questions for clarification? Ramtha, indeed. Student, you have said that the Father expands through us. Does that mean that the divine mind is actually growing through us, through our creations? Ramtha, indeed. For the Father was, in your beginning, the void without form, space without light. And he always would have been that had he not contemplated himself and embraced the thought that he was. When he did that, he expanded himself into light, the first expansion of thought. Of that light, all of us became. Why? To continue the expansion of the Father into forever. How? Through the same process of contemplation that the Father began in the birthing of our light forms. From the splendid moment of our soul's birth, each of us began to evolve and expand ourselves. Our souls enabled us to captivate thought and hold it in the form of emotion. Through that we could go inward, contemplate the thought, and expand it into creativity. That is what allowed the world to come into being, the flower to be a seed into a bloom, and the animals to become and roam. Thought, your beloved Father, is of itself unmanifested emotion. Thought is not given credence as being until it is manifested as emotion within the soul. Once the thought is embraced and recorded in the soul, then it becomes real. Then it has design. Then it has structure. Then it has permanence. Who created everything that you see here? 'Twas not God, the thought. It was you, the gods, the emotion, who took thought and felt it into the lowered forms of matter. What you term reality does not become that until a thought is embraced into emotion within the soul to form an ideal of creation and then expressed as created form. It is feelings and the values of emotion that give thought credence and the form that you call reality. That is how the Father grows every moment. Created form is thus the evolution of thought into emotion. 125. That is what allows matter to be created. That is what allows you to create, to evolve, to become, to express, to do whatever you choose to do. And you have never been judged by the life force that allows you to be what you are, for in being what you are, you expand and give credence to the mind of God. The Father not only works through you but feels through you, is through you. You are that which He is, and that reality is being recreated every moment. That is why everything you do, that you have ever done, has always been accepted in the eyes of God. Everything here, which is born of thought and light, you created. Thus the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of God, has been expanded through his beloved sons, you, himself. So love what you are immensely, for you are a beautiful thing who has created all things for the joy of it. Student, thank you, Ramtha. I have one other question. You said that man has been here for 10.5 million years. But as I understand it, scientists have evidence that man has been here for only about 1 million years, perhaps 2 million at most. Ramtha, for you to understand, your archaeologists have a way to date things based on the radioactivity of that which they find. What gives those things radioactivity is the light principle called your sun. Yet the light from your sun did not directly bombard this plane for as long as your scientists believe, for your planet was surrounded by water for a long time. The water was your oceans, which were still in the atmosphere at that time. When light from your sun hit the water in the stratum, the water diffused the light, thus there was diffused light everywhere. Thus no thing was exposed to radiation as it is this day. Yet they determined the age of man through the radioactivity of that which they find, believing that the sun's rays had direct access to this plane for longer than they really did. The gods have been here as man for 10.5 million years in many forms of the embodiment in order to perfect it. And what I have just given you is a clue for you to contemplate so that you may reason this for yourself. 126. Now tell me, Master, why do you choose this creation story over the others? Do you know why? Student, simply because the explanation pleases me. Ramtha, but why does it please you? Student, because you speak that we are all perfect, that no one is less than anyone else, and that life is ongoing. Ramtha, indeed. And it would also mean that everything your religions have taught could be wrong. Do you know what is wonderful about that? It means that perhaps there really is no such thing as a devil, or hell, or sin, or damnation, or a fearsome God, that they could be wrong. And they are. 127. Chapter 9 Higher than Angels. I tell you, to be a part of humanity is a holy experience, for when you become humanity, you are wholly experiencing God. Only when you become humanity have you journeyed to the perimeters that encompass the entirety of the kingdom of heaven. J. Ramtha. You are really rather splendid, every one of you, for you are volatile, creative, unique, and indeed divine. Though you have been taught that you are wretched creatures, what really matters is how you are known in the understanding called life. And in that understanding you are known as beloved of God the Father, for you are an eternal part of the mind of God. You have yet to realize how precious you truly are, but you will. Who you are to me is a beloved brother, and not only to me but to all entities, seen and unseen, in all universes and in all levels of life, for we are all linked together through the grace, the intelligence, and far greater through the love of that which is termed God, the wondrous thought that supports and holds you throughout all eternity, regardless of all your outrageous endeavors. You are a grander treasure than you know, for without even one of you, life and universes and molecular structures would never have existed. For you and because of you, life has become an exuberant display of the intelligence of the drama, if you will, of the continuation of the patterns of thought into the brilliant colors of reality. You are precious indeed, for regardless of how you think of yourselves, you have added to the spectacular display of the totality of all that is. Splendid you are, for look at the lot of you who comprise humanity. In the semblance of your countenances there is not one of you who looks like another. You are like the flowers of a magnificent garden whose seeds pollinate and create new flowers that are ever more beautiful and lush in their deepening hues. Each of you is beautiful, yet different, for each of you is God expressing through the uniqueness of your own willful, creative designs. 131. All of you were once wisps of thought, emanating light, who became the continuation of God into the ongoingness of forever. In order to erect a greater kingdom for exploration, you designed with great care and much experimentation embodiments of matter, or, if you will, coagulated thought. Through your embodiments you were able to express yourselves upon yet another plane of existence and thus explore the whole of the patterns of thought called God. Thus in your adventures into infinite creativity, you who were once light without form have transformed yourselves into the cellular matter called mankind. In that, you became God, man, the intelligence called the mind of God expressing through the living organism called man. As mankind, you are a remarkable intelligence. You have not only breathed into your own cellular structures the breath of life and the instinctual means to survive, but, for divine purposes, you have integrated your supreme intelligence with the matter of the embodiment for the purpose of refining and evolving it. Through your design of a science of evolution, you have thus evolved yourselves from what is termed Neanderthal to what is called Homo sapiens, humanity. Thus has mankind become on this plane over eons of time and through much experimentation, evolution, and many traumas the erect entities who now sit before me. All of you are here upon what is termed the plane of demonstration in order to demonstrate the power of your creative intelligence in this level of life, a great level of life, for here thought, your beloved Father, exists in all forms of its manifestation, from light all the way to the density of matter. Do you know that intelligence thrives in all places? It does indeed. But here upon this place of yours called Earth is where humanity, the marriage of thought with matter, is at its peak of evolution. You, humanity, do you think you are backward? Do you think you are less than those who are in the unseen? You are not. You are on a grand adventure into the understanding of the whole of your eternal thought processes. Without becoming God in the form 132. Called humanity, you could never understand the conclusiveness that God is. No one could, for the kingdom of God is expansive from light into electrum, into matter, into form. Thus God is not only the higher frequencies of thought, it is also the densest and lowest frequency of thought called gross matter. Only when you have become humanity do you express what the Father is in all forms of thought, for when you are God, man, God, woman, not only are you thought and emotion and evolving will, but you are light, you are electrum, you are matter in the form called flesh and blood. No one expresses the whole of God's kingdom until he becomes God in the form called man. To understand the totality of your thought processes, to embrace the whole of who and what you are, God that you are, you must be pliable enough and love yourself enough to embark upon all planes of existence, including this one. Once you have lived and expressed upon the plane of gross matter, then you will have an understanding of God in the form called matter. Those who have yet to become God, man, do not have the complete experience of God to reflect upon in order to gain the wisdom and understanding of all life. Only the ones who travel to this plane to become a part of the splendor of this plane, to evolve it, to move mountains, to create color, to create monuments of dignity, only they understand the intricacies of love, of joy, of creation. Only those travelers, which you are the ones who have gained the understanding of forever and the desire to pursue it, for they are the ones who create forever for all of life, for as long as there is a plane of matter, it permits the ongoingness of life into infinite creativity. Thus to be man and woman, to be collective humanity, is indeed a privilege. It is an honor. It is indeed divine life. There is a term you have called angels, and there are many of you who desire to be such a divine creature. But there is a great holdback in being an angel because they have no reasoning balance, for they have yet to live as man. They are simply energy, the gods who will eventually become God, man, but they do not. 133. Have sympathy or compassion for mankind. How could anyone in the unseen completely understand you until they have been you? Mankind is far greater advanced than angels, for they have no understanding of God living in the limited form called man, thus they are limited in their understanding of mankind and his joys and sorrows. I tell you, to be a part of humanity is a holy experience, for when you become humanity, you are wholly experiencing God. Only when you become humanity have you journeyed to the perimeters that encompass the entirety of the kingdom of heaven. So you have not degraded yourselves by becoming humanity. You must understand that, because if you have never been the human element, you can never completely enter the kingdom of heaven. How can you ascend into heaven if you have never descended into life? It is worthy, it is worthwhile. It is wise to become man in order to understand this fire that lives within you called God Almighty. All life is composed of this fire, and experiencing it through the supreme intelligence of gross matter, what is called mankind, allows you the complete view of what God is. And when you understand completely all that God is inner and outer space, matter, flesh and blood, love and joy and sorrow, then you will be all that the Father is. Now the reason you are upon this plane is to continue the exploration of God through the density of the embodiment in which you are living. That which supports your creative evolvement is called life, the same life force that holds an atom in its sphere and your earth in space. And that life force has one universal principle, to be ever evolving, ever expanding, ever becoming. Your life's purpose for all time has been to experience life and learn from it, and to refine and integrate what you have learned back into the principle called life. This that you are living is called creation. You are playing with creative thought and expressing it through matter for the purpose of gaining wisdom, understanding, and identifying the great mystery of yourself. Yet all of this plane is a grand 134 illusion. Everyone thinks that the three-dimensional plane is the reality, but it is not. All the games that mankind plays are illusions, they are dreams, for this reality can be dreamt away. The real world is that which lies within you, the encounter with emotion each moment you feel. The real world exists only from the standpoint of emotion, not governed by logic but by moving love. This world that you call reality would never exist if you did not have the eyes to perceive it through moving emotion within your soul, for it would be a no thing. All of this paradise of matter was created simply to evoke emotion within the souls of those who participate in this wonderment of creativity. Why? For the greatest prize of life called wisdom. And wisdom is not an intellectual understanding, it is indeed an emotional understanding gained from experience. Life, this grand stage, is your kingdom. It is the platform upon which you create your illusions. This wondrous stage affords you the opportunity to dream into existence any reality you desire. For the God that you are has the unlimited freedom to dream any thought, feel the emotion, and manifest the dream into a reality. And anywhere in between you can change your mind. The reason for life on a plane of density is to prove to that which embarks upon it, and this is an experience exclusive to humanity, that with each turn of the thought embraced into emotion, the reality soon follows. And when that understanding is grasped, when that awesome power of creativity is realized, it quickens an alignment within you through which you know that you are God. Yet without the human experience, you could never know that. This life is for you to embrace. It is full and rich with the fervor of adventure and challenge. It provides all around you open doors and opportunities for your involvement and evolvement in order for you to become. To become what? The cumulative whole of all experiences, which will equate to you simply that you are God, for only a God has the ability to create monuments in matter that testify to the glory of itself. 135. You are to be commended for being God, man, God, woman, for it is only when God becomes man that life upon this plane can be created and evolve. You are splendid indeed. You are more powerful than you know. Your every emotion, your every thought creates life. It is up to you to give life presence, to support all life to come. It is not for those who are in the unseen. Those in the unseen are ongoing in that understanding. But who is to support this material kingdom that is the emerald of all kingdoms? You, by how you think and how you embrace it. You are the ones who give credence to everything. It is you who add to the platform called life. It is you who exalt and glorify this kingdom of God. You don't know that because you have always thought that you were a little lower than the angels. Hardly. You don't really know that yet, but you will, because soon life and rainbows and colors and lights will become very much a reminder to you of who you really are. It is called the Age of Enlightenment, and, in that time, what will life here have become? It will be understood as a necessary experience for one to unfold into the realization that he is indeed a part of the mind of God. Once you know that, then what of the adventures that await? You will have all of forever to play in. You will have all of the infiniteness of thought to reevaluate and reissue elements, matter, time, space, distance, you. You are splendid indeed because you made a long journey into this sphere to become who you are now. And that journey has been for the purpose of knowing God in all that it is, from thought into light, into the divisions of electrum, into gross matter, into this plane. You all made that journey. That is not only splendid of you, it is also rather daring of you, and there is a bit of risk involved. There is a great possibility, through the transfiguration of the great immortal self into the material plane, of losing one's identity and becoming wholly embroiled in survival. And, alas, that is what most of humanity has done. Do you know why you have ventured to listen to me, enigma that I am? Because you know that what I have just told you is a 136. Truth, and you are seeking the path that leads back to the first divine knowingness that set all of this into motion. Deep within you, you know that you are more than collective matter, that you are more than flesh and blood, that you are really rather divine. And you are. You are here to realize that, to embrace the divine principle that you are, to find within you that there is the beginning light, the breath of thought that gave you life in your beginning. My beautiful masters, you gave the wind life. You gave the sun a reason to be where it is. You gave the storm clouds a reason to muster their strength to nourish and quench the thirst of the earth. You don't know that because you have always considered yourselves less than the love of life that God truly is. I adore you, for I have been as you. I lived your illusions and I became your dreams. And where I went, 1 hour you too shall go, but you shan't ever go there until you have embraced this life and embraced God through the embrace of yourself. I salute you from the depths of my being. You are indeed grand. You are indeed loved. You are indeed needed. You are indeed cherished. You are the reason for forever. You are indeed the reason for life. 137. Chapter 10 The Identifiable God. The Father can never be identified outside of your wondrous being. To even attempt it is unfair to yourself because you are going outside of what you are to describe something which emanates from within you. The way you can identify God is to observe what the Father is in you. Ramtha. Each of you is upon this plane for many reasons, but the grandest reason of all and of utmost importance is to understand and love the greatest mystery of all, the point called self. And that point I refer to appropriately as God the Father within you, that which gave you credence in your beginning, that which you create and evolve through, and that which you will once again become. Since you are to become as God is to express completely the God within you, just what is it that you are to become? What is the identity of God that will give you a point of reference to thus become? Well, let us see. This God that I love, that I am a servant unto, that all wonders are worked through, is the ongoingness of the totality of life. In the ongoingness of the kingdom of life, which is the ongoingness of eternity, the now is all there ever is. In this now, this specific moment, God is all things that are being as they are. Thus in this now, God is the iceness of all that is. And in the nows to come, God is the pulsating of all life ongoing abreast of itself, vibrantly living, feeling, expanding, evolving, expressing the beingness of itself. God is the conclusiveness of all things that are, and yet it is without borders, without beginning, and without ending. It is the infiniteness that has no parallel. The iceness of God is reality upon reality, dimension upon dimension, universe upon universe. You have one little galaxy here. And if you think that you are the only life that exists in it, you are rather arrogant. In your Milky Way alone there are 10 billion suns, and with each sun there are planets that are supporting life. There is no number in counting to tell you how many solar systems there are. None. There is no number in counting. 141. To tell you of every planet, great and small, and the life that dwells therein. There is no number. And if you wish to comprehend infinity, you had best reprogram your thinking to perceive beyond time, distance, and measure, for in a greater reality, none of these exist. God is. When was the beginning? There never was one. God always was the thought, the space, the void that supports and gives life to the telstars. Know you what a telstar is? It transforms light into matter and spews it forth into the universe to create stellar systems. Where did the telstar come from? Thought, God, space, the great void, where you look out and see stars and forever. If you want to visualize God in its impeccable and infinite being, visualize the open-ended eternity called space, for space is the river of thought that surrounds everything you see, that supports and gives credence to everything that is. Everyone talks about space as if it were nothing. But what is the power that allows all things to steadfast themselves into orbital systems? What is it that holds up your Earth in the void? What supports your Milky Way, which has 10 billion suns in it? What holds it up? What causes your sun to be held in position? What allows the passage of all matter? What indeed is the highway that light travels upon? You say, nothing. Show me a no thing that can support 10 billion suns and their solar systems. God is on one level the matter that makes up the substance of all things. On another level it is the time flow of the different dimensions, the time warp that creates parallel universes. On another level it is the spectrum called light that gives supportiveness to matter. And on the greatest level of all, it is the no thing that holds you into position, thought, the foreverness of space. God is the whole of life pulsating, expanding, evolving, ongoing into forever. It is the iceness that allows what was, the permeance of what is, and the promise of what is to come. It is the movement that endows life, the unlimited thought process that reaches no goals or ideals but is continuously creating life from thought, into light, into matter. God is the essence of 142. The identifiable God. All that is in a motivated force that is ever changing, ever creating, ever expanding, ever being. How can you identify that which is all-encompassing, all-powerful, ever-evolving, ever-moving, ever-allowing, ever-being? How can you say this is what God is, when what God is now will not be the same in the next now? How do you perceive an open-ended universe? With a finite thinking mind you cannot identify that which is beyond time, distance, space, and matter because with a finite mind you cannot reach that far with description. Though the terms God and the Father have been used, they are only words to refer to all that is, that has been, that ever will be, from the iceness of what was, to the iceness of what is, to the unlimited iceness of forever. So where do you find a point of reference for becoming God? In you, for what you are is the image of God, the duplicate of what the Father is. The essence that you are is that which is ongoing, evolving, ever-changing, ever-creating, ever-being. You are thought, you are light, you are electrum, you are form. You are pure energy, awesome power, pulsating emotion, sublime thought. That which you have perceived to be the highest level of intelligence, of power, dignity, holiness, and grace is that which is you. Who are you? You are the identifiable God. The Father can never be identified outside of your wondrous being. To even attempt it is unfair to yourself because you are going outside of what you are to describe something which emanates from within you. The only way you can identify God is to observe what the Father is in you. And isn't that rather nice, after all? It takes you out of the complexities of trying to comprehend infinite creation and brings you into the here and now of your own life, your own thought processes, your own iceness. The only way you can perceive, understand, and emotionally know the Father is to understand and emotionally know who you are, then you will know God. Then you can say, I know who the Father is, for the Father and I are one, and I know who I am. 143. To be as God is to be as you are. When you simply are the iceness of yourself, you are open-ended, unlimited, creative, and optional. You are allowing, you are movement, you are quiet, you are joy. You are pure energy, powerful direction, all feeling, all thought. Being and loving yourself with all of your being and all of your breath and allowing the virtue of yourself into life or being as God is. Simply allow yourself to be, an iceness. In being, you are everything. To become God is to say, I am. 144. Chapter 11 The Gift of Love. Love in its ultimate form is the desire of the Father to allow the life that He is to be an ongoingness through each of you. The purest form of love is the freedom of will that the Father gave each of you so that through the exercise of that will you would explore the dimensions of thought and expand yourself into a creatorness, which expands the mind of God. Ramtha, there is no such thing as the will of God apart from your own divine will. If God wanted life to be the mundaneness of a singular expression, He never would have created you into being, nor would He have given you the will to express your own purposeful uniqueness. What is called the will of God was created by man so that he could govern and control his brothers. Yet if you believe that teaching and see God's will is separate from yours, then you will always be in the battle of His will versus yours, for you will want to do certain things and feel you must, yet the will of God says you must not. God is not separate from you. You and He are one and the same. Your will is His will. Whatever you want to do is what you term divine providence, divine will. So you are never in conflict with destiny, for destiny is not preordained, it is ordained wholly by you. Everything you think creates your moments to come. Your very now moment is simply the product of the thoughts you had moments ago. That is the science of God. The only thing the Father wills for you is to experience the totality of life that He is, according to the feelings within your soul. Why? So that you come to understand what joy is in the unconditional love that God has for you in all life. If you feel you are at odds with God, perhaps you should reconstruct your image of what God is, for I tell you He is not allowing if you must fight Him. In the beginning, when the Father contemplated His most splendid self, He expanded Himself into the splendor of light. It was from that expansion in light that each of you became God in the form of a unique, singular movement so that you would continue the expansion of thought into forever. 147. In order for God to be an ever-expanding uniqueness through your contemplative thoughts, it was necessary to give each of you the power to create uniquely from the thought that He is. And He did this by giving you the action called free will. The principle of will was given to each of you so that you would be unique and sovereign, so that you would be the creator of your own truth, sovereign in your own understanding. What gives you your divine essence is that you have the freedom to embrace and experience whatever thoughts you desire. And that divine essence, called free will, is love. It is the gift of love from God to each of you. Each of you has the divine essence of will so that you have the freedom to create uniquely whatever ideal you envision through thought. Love in its ultimate form is the desire of the Father to allow the life that He is to be an ongoingness through each of you. The purest form of love is the freedom of will that the Father gave each of you so that through the exercise of that will you would explore the dimensions of thought and expand yourself into a creatorness, which expands the mind of God. Free will gives you a uniqueness yet a oneness with the Father that permits your thought processes to have their own creative flow. And every moment you create through the contemplation and expansion of your own thoughts, you imitate the same love that the Father had for Himself when He created you into being, for creation is the act of bringing love from within your being into a unique, free-moving, creative form, which will live on into forever. From the illustrious moment of your birth, the Father gave each of you through pure, unconditional love this covenant: whatever you think, whatever you desire, the Father shall become. Through that covenant that still is and always shall be, each of you became the heir to the totality of what the Father is. Thus the Father always gives you all that He has become so that you can experience and understand the totality of life that He is. He is the basis of the fulfillment of your dreams. But who is the dream maker? You. And what are your dreams made? 148. The gift of love. Of thought, God, life. You can take from the totality of thought that God is and create any truth, any attitude, any desire you wish. Whatever truth or attitude you create in your thought processes, the Father, life, readily becomes. And whatever ideal of thought you desire, the Father freely manifests through the matter that He is so that you may experience it. To give you an example of God's love for you, let us look at the creature called a snake, an ideal created by a God for the purpose of extended life in a life chain. This creature has a long, slender body with many muscles and many bones. It moves very swiftly and has a very big head with fangs that can puncture you as its only defense. Though its bite can bring down a man of great size within moments, any man could hack the snake to bits or easily crush it. Now let us take two gods. The first, who has a scientific mind, sees the snake as a wonderful creation, for it can move very swiftly, even without feet, and has a beautiful pattern and color to its skin, and a marvelous skeleton that seems to go on and on and on. The second god comes up and says that the snake is hideous and vile, it is an awful creature because its bite is dangerous, and it can kill a man. To the Father, the iceness of all life, all things are pure in their state of being. All things are innocent in their expression of the life that He is. It is only each entity's attitude towards something that makes it a beautiful or a vile, ugly thing. It is only we gods who have the creative ability to take from the thought that the Father is contemplated, and alter it, who judge something that is really pure and innocent as something other than being. How great is the love of God, which is the life substance that the snake is, that He gives you, His greatest creation, the right to cast your attitude and will upon the snake however you choose. The love that the life source has for you is so great that it will become any one thing that you desire through thought. The Father will be anything you wish Him to be. He will allow you to alter Him in any way you wish to alter Him. The life that He is will 149. Become vile or ugly or vulgar, or it will become to the height of beauty, however you wish to see it. Now is that not a wondrous thing, that the Father will become however you perceive and desire Him to be simply through the whims of your thought processes? Indeed it is. That is love. You can do with thought whatever you will, for the Father's love for you is steadfast. No matter how vile or wretched you perceive the life that God is, to Him it is still Him. It is still God. It is still pure, and it is still love. That promise is unshakable, for the Father is of Himself wholly without attitudes, He simply is. The love between you and God has no condition. If the Father in any way censored your thoughts or restricted you from experiencing the totality of the life that He is, then you would not have the freedom to continue His expansion into forever. Neither would you gain the wisdom from your adventures in thought in order to understand the love and joy that the Father truly is in His supreme state of being. God loves you in complete freedom to do as you will, for your will is His will. That is the covenant between God and His sons, God and Himself. Whatever you do, wherever you venture unto Him, you are always loved. He allows you to do whatever you desire, for He knows that you are ongoing, that nothing can ever take you from Him. The Father has created no thing superior to Himself that can remove your life force ever, so you will always be. And when your life here is spent, there will be yet another, with the freedom to create it however you choose. You will live this life and all of those to come according to your will. And what has given you the freedom to do that is that which loves you, that which is called your Father, God Almighty, the lover of all things. You are free entities. How? Through the power called will and the ability called love. 150. Chapter 12. Nothing but truth. There is truth in everything, Master, but there is also refinement in all things, for each moment refines truth. That is WF. Why God is not in a state of perfection but rather a state of becoming. Each entity continually progresses in his understanding to encompass more unlimited truth. And whatever his understanding is, moment to moment to moment, it will be the truth as he sees it, as he knows it. J.J. Ramtha. Student, I feel like I've spent my whole life going from one religion to another and, more recently, from one teacher to another trying to understand what life and God are all about. I'm really confused, Ramtha, because everyone has something different to say. Even though many things are the same, they all teach different things, and some of them are even completely the opposite of the other. For instance, you say that there is no right or wrong and that God loves us whatever we do. In a way, what you teach makes sense to me, but it's very different than what others teach. And some of what you teach seems a little far out in a sense because it's so different than what I have been taught my whole life. I'm confused, Ramtha. I don't know who to believe. How do I determine what is really true, what the truth is? Ramtha, first, Master, what mean you by the term far out? Student, well, what I mean is, one has to stretch his thoughts to understand or accept some of the things you say. Ramtha, would you say that infinity and forever are far out? Student, well, yes, in a way. Ramtha, then my teachings are indeed far out, for that is how far they will take you, all the way to the perimeters of forever. Now tell me, Master, what is not true? Student, well, for example, imagination, fantasy, things that don't correspond with reality. Ramtha, indeed. What are imagination and fantasy? Student, thoughts you entertain in your mind, things you make up in your thoughts. Ramtha, and when you are entertaining these thoughts, are they not real? Are they not a reality in your consciousness? Are 153. They not a truth in thought? Student, yes, but they may be true only in my mind. They don't necessarily correspond with the truth about how things really are in reality. Ramtha, you know, Master, everyone wishes to know what the truth is. But if there is the truth, what is everything other than that when it also has a reality in consciousness? Do you know what the truth is? That there is none. There being none means that everything is. Everything is true, Master. There is nothing untrue, for all things are derived from thought, which is God. And God is not one formulated thought, He is the reality of all thoughts. Everything is real, for everything has been given credence through thought and has purpose in being. What you term imagination and fantasy are certainly real, for they are constituted of purposeful thought. Student, even though they don't correspond with the real world that is out there. Ramtha, the world out there, which you call real, Master, is only the illusion and creation of the greatest reality of all, which is the unseen reality called thought and emotion. How do you think all of your world out there came into being? It was created by imagination and fantasy. And once it became a reality in its material form, it then spurred further imagination and fantasy, for each begets the other and both are indeed real. Everything created in thought, everything that exists in consciousness whether or not it is ever manifested into the form called material reality is true, Master. Student, no matter how bizarre it is. Ramtha, indeed, entity, for only attitudes determine bizarreness. Every thought entertained in your mind is true, for it is alive in consciousness, thus it is a part of the greatest reality, termed the mind of God, the platform from which all life springs forth. Now let us see, Master, if we can help you out a bit with your confusion. God the Father is thought, the truth of all. 154. Thought. And the splendid thing about God is that He is indeed lawless, for if the Father had laws, He would be limited. But since the Father is unlimited, He allows options to His unlimited truth, unlimited thought. The Father has given each of you the will to accept and create from thought whatever truth adds to your own individuality, to perceive truth according to your desire and your unique progression into wisdom. And whatever truth you create in thought, the Father, life, will become so you may experience and understand that truth, that dimension of thought called God. Truth is only what an individual perceives truth to be. Truth is an opinion, an attitude, a belief about something that has become an absolute and creative thought. Yet everyone's opinion about any one thing will differ, often vastly, for each has formulated that opinion based on his unique experiences and the understanding or misunderstanding that he has gained in his soul, not only from this life but from all lives lived before this one. So one entity will believe something to be true and another may not. The two cannot comprehend one another because they have not been one another and had the same collective experiences. Whose truth is correct? Both are. They are both truthfully right, for each is expressing the truth which his experience and understanding have allowed him to perceive. But if one's truth is that his truth is the only one that is correct, he is limited in his understanding. Each entity in this dream according to his experience and his own need and for the purpose of the fulfillment of self will accept and create whatever truths he desires to experience for his evolution into wisdom. And for the purpose of that experience, each will seek out sources of truth which support what he wants to believe. Thus for however many gods that inhabit this plane, there will be that many unique sets of truths, for each entity has the will and the right and the need to create truth differently. So whatever you read or hear from a teacher is perceived truth, how he sees it, how he has learned it, how he has created it, how he is experiencing it. Thus if you studied under 10 teachers, 155, you would certainly be in great confusion, for each one's truth will be different. And you may certainly find that one or another's perception of truth will fit whatever you are needing at the moment. But if you are trying to discern which one speaks the truth, when you look at all of them you will realize that all of them do. What you must decide is to what degree you wish to become a particular truth, for whatever truth you accept will become an experienced reality in your life. There are great teachers on your plane, Master, and they are magicians of sorts, for they can do and manifest wondrous and miraculous things. But they still believe in death, and thus they will die. Even though they have progressed greatly in their learning, they have not yet taken their understanding beyond the limitations of death and dying to the understanding that life is really a continuum in being. So if you were to accept their truths as the truth, you too might become a magician, but you will also die. You see, there is truth in everything, Master, but there is also refinement in all things, for each moment refines truth. That is why God is not in a state of perfection but rather a state of becoming. Each entity continually progresses in his understanding to encompass more unlimited truth. And whatever his understanding is, moment to moment to moment, it will be the truth as he sees it, as he knows it. Let us take a flower, for example. Is it true that the flower is a bud? Indeed. When the flower blooms, is it a liar because it is no longer a bud? No. It is in a state of progressive truth. And is the flower a liar when its petals fall and are no more? What is it then? It is in a further state of its truth. Any teachings that you hear or read from a source that teaches of laws or limits man, or divides the iceness into good and evil, or says that God is a singular entity rather than the iceness of all that is, any teachings like that are coming from entities who simply have accepted that to be their truth and are compelled to give it to the world. That is their truth, Master, and they are not wrong. But a greater, more refined truth is that anyone who 156 teaches that life is in any way limited has not progressed in his understanding as greatly as others have. For is God limited? If he were, Master, life would not be ongoing and you would not even have the option to be confused. What I teach is indeed a wondrous truth, for who dares to call God lawless, for then he cannot be used to control and enslave others. But the Father, the Supreme Consciousness, is indeed without the limitation of laws and judgments and endings. When you progress in your truth to embrace that unlimited understanding, then you will experience and truly understand the love and joy and ongoingness that the Father is. Everyone knows, Master, only to the extent that they desire and allow themselves to know. And most knowledge on your plane is built upon fear and survival and polarities of understanding. It is built upon judgment and the separation of peoples. It is built upon the understanding that man is a fallen creature who has no divinity. But man is God, Master, thus to judge man is to judge God. To limit man is to limit God. To separate man from his divinity is to take divinity away from God. If what you read or hear from a teacher limits your thought processes, it indeed limits the thought processes of the Father. Listen to what is said and how it is said. If it limits, separates, divides, then it is a limiting truth of an entity who has yet to progress into a more unlimited understanding. What you inevitably learn from all of these teachers, Master, is that you alone are your greatest teacher, for only you know what is the best of all things for you. How can anyone else know when he is busy living his own life and assessing truth from his own point of view? Only you can know what experience is needed in your soul for your own fulfillment. Only you can be the giver of your own truth, for truth is self-ordained and self-established. And that truth will not be found through scientific or intellectual understandings but rather through an emotional understanding, for truth is a feeling, a knowingness, it is not intellectual. To know what the truth is for you is to know what you feel the truth is. 157. Student, but, Ramtha, how can you feel that something is true if it is not supported by facts, or if it is perhaps contrary to what science has discovered to be true? Ramtha, Master, nothing can be proven by what you term facts, for facts will change as the understanding of mankind evolves and changes. Everything is conjecture, for reality is continually evolved and created through thought and emotion. Facts are only the current material manifestations of collective consciousness, collective thoughts that have been embraced into emotion by the whole of mankind. The proof, Master, is in the feeling, in emotion, for that is what gave reality to the fact in the first place. What is the greatest reality, the greatest truth? Not facts, Master. It is the feelings you have by accepting facts as reality, as truths in thought. That is the true fact. It is emotion that is the greatest reality. That is where all truth lies. Whatever you choose to believe, Master, so it will be. So now you choose what is proper for you, what you wish to believe. Student, but Ramtha, I don't understand how that could be. For example, in times when most people believed the earth was flat, if half of the sailors on a boat thought that the earth was round and half thought that it was flat and they sailed off to sea, what happened to the boat? Ramtha, those who thought it was flat, Master, flung themselves overboard. Heaven forbid they should be proven wrong. The ones who thought it was round continued the journey. You see, those who believed firmly that the world was flat never ventured to the edge to find out differently, for they were sure it was flat. Those who believed it was round sailed around and around and around. And they were convinced that it was round. But they did not know that it is not round. It is rather squashed. It is bursting at its seams, flat-headed and flat-bottomed, and it is hollow. But those who firmly believe it is solid will never know otherwise, for they will never contemplate going inward to find out differently. That is because they are of a limited understanding. 158. Which nonetheless is still true. Be unlimited in your truth, Master. Know that your world is round. But if you wish to be even more unlimited in your truth, know that it is flattened on its top and bottom. And to be even more unlimited, know that it is hollowed. And to be even more unlimited than that entity, know that the center of your earth is very much inhabited. But try to tell your scientists that if what you believe is of a limited form, then that is your truth, and you are correct and precise. If you believe in an unlimited form, then that is your truth, correct and precise. But if you are searching for something to believe in, don't believe in either. Believe in you. There is no entity, no thing, no reality that is greater than you are, for you are the giver of all truth, the creator of all realities, the dispenser of all laws within your kingdom. Now what I would tell any one entity is this: go and learn from your teachers or your religions until you are bored or it makes no more sense. Then seek the answer that feels right within your soul. Your soul knows what the truth is, and it will tell you through feelings. When the truth feels right, that is your soul rejoicing, because the grandest truth is unlimited freedom, whatever allows you to experience any truth you desire. Truth is a limitation, Master. To say that anything is true indicates there is untruth. But in a greater understanding there is neither truth nor untruth, there is only the iceness of ongoing, evolving life. Life is the only reality, and from that all truth emerges, for truth is evolved and created every moment by every thought you have. Thus in any moment you can change your mind and think something else, and yet they are both true. They are both real principles, for both are options for emotional understanding. There is no reality but life and options. When you understand that everything is true and nothing is, that there is only iceness, then you can perceive truth to be whatever you determine it to be, and it will be absolute as long as you recognize it as such. The moment you don't recognize and give credence to that truth, it is no longer real. That is why this plane is the plane of creative realities. 159. Whatever truth you create in your life, know that you also can change. What allows you to become sovereign is to know that you can do and become anything you want, and that you have the ability to change your mind anytime you want. How long does it take you to become happy? Only long enough for you to think joy, and you will begin to beam. How long does it take you to become despairing? As long as it takes you to think despair, and you will become it. What is the underlying truth in this? That you have the option to become either anytime you desire, and that you can change your expression anytime you desire. That is the freedom the Father loves you with. When you know that truth within your being, you will exceed your limitedness into your godhood. And when others have permitted themselves to be governed with laws and morals and ideals, you will be a free entity, for you will belong to no truth but your own. Only remember this: whatever you think to be, is. Anytime you believe in anything, it becomes truth in an emotional reality within your being. That is why everyone is always on the pinnacle of truth, no matter what that point of view is. Your creative reality will always be different from everyone else's. And when others utterly fail to see your reality, it is only because they are so immersed in the illusions of their own. When you understand that truth is and can be all things, then you have not limited yourself from experiencing all things. Then you can readily participate in all experiences and have knowledge of them. Then you are free, for you are no longer enslaved to concepts or intellectual understandings that say this is how it is, when how it is truly everything that can be defined in thought. This truth I give you, Master, provides a greater unlimitedness in being, for in its virtue and context it embraces everyone else's truth and allows all truths to coexist in harmony. When you embrace this understanding, then you can say to yourself, of the truth that I express, I am multifaceted in my truth. I am not one truth but all truth. Then you are no longer inhibited in your creative flow or cloistered into one form of living and being. 160. Be who you are, not under the direction of Ramtha or Buddha or Yeshua or any other teacher, for none can teach you of your God self, they can teach you only of theirs. To fulfill your destiny, you must become who and what you uniquely are. If you try to live according to another's life plan, you will never become that. The only way you will come to understand who you are and this fire that lives within you is through the truth of your own emotional understanding. Love what you are intently and listen to the God within you, which speaks a very subtle tone. It is called feelings. The feelings, if you listen to them, will tell you of truth and your path for enlightenment. Live the truth you feel inside you. Live it and manifest it so that it attests to the glory of you. When you do, then you will have assessed, lived, and understood life from your point of view. And however you perceive it, it will all be right. Be your own teacher, your own savior, your own master, your own God. When you contemplate the simplicity of this, it will release you into the freedom to understand. Then you will not get caught up in trying to determine what is true and what is not, what is real and what is illusion. When you begin to remove yourself from the laws of religious dogma and belief and cease striving to be another's truth, then you are free to express yourself and experience the things that your soul calls you to do, so you can be fulfilled in whatever knowledge and understanding you are lacking. Then through experience and emotion you at your own individualized pace become God, moment by moment by moment. And where shall your eternity end? Nowhere, for you are ongoing into forever. When you learn that each moment you live, you are refining your own opinionated self, and when you allow yourself to do that without guilt and judgment of self, then one day you become the truth of all thought, the platform from which all life springs forth. But you cannot become that until you remove yourself from the collective consciousness of man with its laws, ideals, and mass identity and allow yourself to be the 161. Niceness of your own truth, of your own purposeful self. For a long time man has separated himself from his divinity by taking away all of his options and creating laws in place of them. But the winds of change are upon this plane to bring about a newness, a reckoning in everyone, an unsettling of what has been considered absolute. I am pleased you have come to be a part of it, for your life will be much more joyous from this day forth. For who are you to answer to? No one but yourself. And what is the truth? Whatever self decrees it to be, for whatever you believe, so it is, and whatever you believe, so you will become. Know that, and you will teach many just by the way you live. Never seek truth. Simply be. In being, you are at one with infinite universes. Student, there's much for me to contemplate. Ramtha, indeed, Master. Niceness. So be it. Student, I have been practicing astrology for several years now, and I want to know if there is something you can tell me which will help me to be more effective with my clients. Ramtha, first, Master, tell me why you delight yourself in this practice. Student, because I believe that the stars and planets have an influence on our lives, and that by studying them we can better know and understand ourselves and our destiny. Ramtha, you know, Master, man has always gazed at the silent mystery of the stars in your heavens in search for his homeland, for he knows instinctively within him that he came from a far greater place than the hovel where he was born. When man began to search the lights in the sky at night, he noticed to his amazement that they moved. And as they moved, the seasons moved with them. And when he observed a power in them that he could not control, he reckoned that their movements must also be responsible for the fortunes and misfortunes that befall the kingdom of man. There has been many a wise man, prophet, or sage who has used the powerful belief in the stars to govern and rule empires. And if their prophecies of peril came true, who was responsible? 162. Certainly not the seer. Then it must be the damnable stars that caused it to be so. Yet the stars, in their silence, have never been able to defend themselves and proclaim their innocence. I will tell you this, Master. Everyone here is a God who was created with free will. And in your beginning, you, the light beings, as sovereign entities, used that freedom of will to create the stars, the planets, and all the universes, seen and unseen. You are also the gods who would later create the embodiments that you possess, which are far greater than any universe. You are this very moment the same gods who still possess the same powerful creativeness that you had in your beginning. And in all of those eons of time you have never created anything to control you, unless you believe that it does. And in that you are still the controller of your life, for you have accepted the belief that you are controlled by something outside of your being, thus you have allowed it to be so. There are many who believe in astrology. And it does indeed have its truth, for it is believed to be a truth. But take it a step further and ask who the giver of this truth is and how the stars and planets in their movements could be greater than the gods who created them in the first place. Who you are, Master, will never be discovered through the movement in your heavens. And regarding the movement of the planets and the stars determining one's destiny, 'tis not so, for if that were a truth, we would not have such things as dreams, or imagination, or creativity, or life. In each of your lives upon this plane you were born under many stars, all of which were shining at that time. To say that your destiny is controlled or influenced by a select few is not only unreasonable, Master, but it takes away your freedom and innocence to express your life and the God that you are. The gods have created many games, and astrology is one of them. And at times it is a very dangerous game because it instills in the entity a fear of his future and predetermines his future days of emotion. Those who think that astrologers possess all-wise, knowing intelligence are literally putting forth their valuable lives. 163. Into the hands of another, and I am not in agreement with that. As your astrology is a game, so is your religious dogma, so is your politics, so is your marketplace, so is everything that you allow to enslave you so that you can play the game of survival. Those who practice astrology are indeed beautiful in their true concern for others and their desire to help them. And to study the stars is a wonderful thing, for they are beautiful in their movement and enchanting in their mystery. But if you base your life upon them, Master, you are no greater than the gases that make them up. Astrology is only a tool, it is only a game. The real truth is coming through the entity who is opening his mouth to say, alas, I have determined what your future will bring, because he has picked up on the emotional, magnetic, electrical field surrounding the entity for whom he is doing this. If you were to remove the game and tell the client these same things, it would certainly be amazing to him. But of course it would not be nearly as intriguing as saying that a certain star is at fault and that he is a part of some divine, cosmic plan. So it was with the wise men of old who looked into crystal balls, lit fires, gazed upon water, made explosions, drank wine and elixirs and all sorts of things, only to convey a truth by making it more acceptable. Man has always looked outside of himself to find answers and reasons for his fate and his destiny. It has always been more comforting to blame the silent stars or the rule of kings or the will of God than to look within to the creator of the universes. It has always been easier to seek out priests and prophets and seers for guidance than to believe that oneself is wise enough to be the giver of it. As long as you look outside of yourself for reasons and answers, you will never hear the voice within you, the giver of all truth and the creator of all that is. You will always be at the hands of superstitious beliefs and outrageous reasonings that blind you to the awesome power and infinite understanding that you truly possess. You, Master, are a sovereign entity who can accept and create. 164. Nothing but truth. Any truth you want. You can become the master of your kingdom or allow yourself to be the slave, whichever you desire to experience. When you realize that each entity is the true creator and controller of his life, the designer of his destiny, perhaps you will take that same realization and create for yourself a more unlimited life. And that will be a very grand thing for your being. When you are playing with your games, remember who created them. And remember that the same creator, who can become vulnerable to anything he wishes to, can in a moment change whatever he does not like and once again take hold of his life. Now I wish to tell you this in regard to the game of astrology. Astrologers are basing their houses on 12, yet there are 14. There is a planet that is considered to be a star but is rather a nebula. It is a beautiful, luminous planet that has been here for a very long time. That is another house, as it were. And already in the cradle orbit of your sun there is a new planet formulating, which was brought forth several thousand years ago when the sun's flares were great. That, Master, is 14. How can astrologers be so accurate when they are off by 2 whole houses? When you do these readings, Master, I desire for you to do this, after you have plotted and planned and all of that, when the reading is finished, tell them that the universes are nothing without them, that without them, there would not have been any such things as stars or planets. That is all you have to say. They will never forget what you have said, for it will bother them. It will uplift them, and it will make them arrogant. I am pleased you have come here. You will learn profoundly from this audience. Of those who come here, there are many who will not embrace the unlimited truths that I teach, for not all are desirous of freedom. But that is all right. They are still loved, and they are still right, and they are still God, the creator of all realities. 165. Chapter 13 Love, and do what you will. When man rees himself from this restrictive consciousness, with its laws and plans and rules, he will find the JF. And peace OJ being that will allow him to love himself and the whole OJ mankind and allow all to be in the Redom OJ their own willful designs. Then he will love as God loves. Then he will be as God is, the playform which nurtures and supports all life. So be it. Ramtha. Student Ramtha, how do you fit into God's plan? Ramtha, God's plan. What makes you think, entity, that God has a plan? Student, because there must be a good reason why things are the way they are. Ramtha, the only plan that the Father has is to be, so that everything can express the life that the Father is. If he had a plan, as it were, it would take away your freedom to express the God within you, which would take away your uniqueness and your ability to evolve yourself and expand the life principle called God. God's only plan is that it is. It is everything vibrating at one with itself, at a tone that is based first in thought, and from thought into mass vibrating, adding and taking from consciousness, elongating expressing yet another moment of life. Everything that is expresses abreast of everything else that is into the next moment of eternity. If God could plan, it would limit everything that is to come. This hairy rug that you have your rump upon, what is the reason it is here? Simply because it is. Thus it fits into God's plan because everything else is. And what is the reason this beloved Master is here? Because he is. And this beloved Master, how does he fit into God's plan? By simply being, just as you are being. And how do I fit in? I am, entity. I am, as much as this hairy rug is. How do I fit in? I will love you as grandly as anyone will ever love you because I have the capacity to do that, for I do not worry about whether my love or expression fits in with some elusive, divine plan. How do I add to the overall niceness of life? By helping you understand what the Father truly is and why it loves you regardless. 169. Of however you are, and by bringing perhaps into a clearer focus how all of life fits together, so you may understand that the reason everything is simply to express not according to any scheme, not for any ulterior motive, but simply because it has life. Why is that important? When you understand that life simply is, that allows you the freedom and the power to create your life to the greatest of your ability. And you may rest assured that whatever you do in the next moment, you will be vibrating amongst all life, and you will continue to do so in the next moment and the next one and the ones to come thereafter. There is not a plan for life, Master. There is only iceness. To be in a state of iceness is the grandest expression. There is iceness. What matters, entity, is that you are. That is all that matters. Student, what you seem to be saying is that there is no particular way that one should live, that you can be and do anything you want, that anything goes.